Hey everyone, we are really excited to be here with Dave Dahler and excited to talk to Dave today about his business, Menlo Transition, and we are excited about the topic based on it being such a hot topic. Menlo Transition is a great group that we at Dentist Advisors enjoy working with. Anything to do with buying a practice, selling a practice, appraising your practice. Um, and I have to say that no matter what, everybody listening to this will eventually do one of those things. So for all of our clients, you need somebody to you're either preparing to purchase or you're preparing to sell, or you're also thinking like the good ones are doing, preparing about 5 years in advance and getting your practice appraised and starting to be prepared for when that time comes, and working with somebody to help you and guide and direct you a little bit. um, Dave is awesome in all regards, and so is Menlo. And excited to share the screen here with Dave today, and let him share a little bit about that, those topics specifically, the industry, how to navigate all the above, and inside of transition. So, Dave, so good to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's really great to be here. I appreciate the time, and always great to talk to you, man. Thank you for sharing some time. It's funny you mentioned that the folks wherever they are in the trajectory of their careers. It's interesting the transition folks. I've been in dental for a long time, I'll get to that in a little bit, but like the transition folks used to be 62, 63, and some would be, and if you were really ahead of it, you might be 58, and some would never think about it till they were 70, and I'm going to die in this chair, right? So with the some of the things that have gone on over the course of the last 15 years in terms of corporate dentistry, of course, and um, private equity sort of foray into this business, and the average age of a seller, of somebody looking at transition, continues to go down because there are different exit strategies versus just walk out, list the practice tomorrow, walk out the door in 6 months, and never turn back. So I think it's telling. It's the timing is probably better today than it would have been even 10 or 15 years ago for docs at different stages of their career. So I'm happy to share a little bit about what we've learned, what I've learned over the course of my career, and kind of how what we do at Menlo can help folks to navigate that. And sometimes the path is a little trickier. Sometimes the path is very straightforward. Having some folks in your corner, like the folks at Dentist Advisors, like us, can help you to make that a little easier and make more confident decisions as you go. So with that, we'll talk a little the today I'll talk some about the Menlo Group and who we are, and about Dave and who I am. We'll talk some about practice sales, just a little bit about some of the nuance between selling to a private individual doc versus selling to a group, a private equity backed group. What One of the things we'll really dive into, or I'll really dive into, is about real estate and how that sort of fits into this, because most of the docs listening have either own it today and may not even own the practice anymore, but probably own the real estate or have aspirations to own real estate, and how that all sort of intersects together as you're building the business, as you look to transition out of the business, and really just coming up with a comprehensive plan that not only addresses the practice but the real estate as well. So we'll dig into a lot of that stuff. So to start with Menlo, really we're a full service broker. We provide real estate brokerage. Really, we got our start as a real estate broker in just outside of Phoenix, Arizona, in Tempe, about 16 years ago. We started in the real estate world. We've since added property management and project management as it relates to docs relocating their practice or expanding, and then obviously wanting to run the building and all that goes along with that. About 10 years ago, we added business brokerage, really practice brokerage, On the dental side is where we started. We've since expanded into general business and into the medical space, but our bread and butter in the business brokerage side has been dental since we started that north of 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So on the real estate side, we've got about 10, we have 10 advisors. We just added our 11th advisor on the business sales side with dental practice, who's another dental advisor. So 7 of our 11 on the business side are dental folks, but really areas of focus all over in different verticals. We've got a dedicated back shop of transaction managers and marketing and financial analysis and valuation stuff, so that we make sure that we're educated, and in turn can make our docs educated as to what the market bears, what the practice is worth, what the real estate is worth. And those two things are oftentimes tied in together. Same on the real estate side, right? Dedicated folks have been doing this a long time, a wealth of experience with those 10 advisors, and really our number of verticals that we service on the real estate side is even more robust than it is on the practice side. So really, we started this business in the real estate world, and now they dovetail very nicely together, as we, especially in the dental side, because so many of our dentist practice owners also own the real estate. So a little about me. I'm my tail of the tape. The 210 is, I mean, it's loose, right? Like in the holidays, it's more like 220, but it's almost spring break time. We got to get down to fighting weight here. I've been married for a little over 20 years. I've 2 daughters and a son. I live and work in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I work all over the U.S. I started in this crazy world of dental back in 2008 with Bank of America Practice Solutions, division of the bank that dealt specifically in healthcare, but really dental was the bread and butter, remains the bread and butter of that world. To this day, still the 800-pound gorilla in the dental financing world. B of A lent north of $2 billion to dentists last year, like they did the year before, like they did the year before that. So my job, I started in Columbus, Ohio at our corporate office for a couple of years, and then was promoted and moved up here to Wisconsin. And my job was outside business development, find docs who are looking to borrow money to start a practice or buy their real estate or relocate or buy equipment. And the hope was that they would borrow Bank of America's money. So I did that for 11 years of outside business development. Really, I covered 6 states: Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, North and South Dakota. So other than those states all being really cold this time of year, they have another thing in common, which is like a lot of wide open space, right? So as a result, there are a lot of folks who wanted to build buildings. There was land aplenty and opportunity to buy real estate and/or buy land and build your own real estate. And so I had to trial by fire, get really, really comfortable talking about dental commercial real estate. And it's nuanced, and it's not straightforward like a dental practice sale might be from the banking side. Like, you go to borrow money to buy a dental practice. It's such a fortunate business, such a fortunate industry, where the dental banking channel is amazing, right? There's 4 or 5 different great banks, national banks, and then some local ones, and 100% financing, and no money down, long-term fixed rates, folks who understand the business, who are very well connected. Like, it's a really great place to be, and you don't have to have saved any money to come up with no money down. As a matter of fact, they'll give you money on top of buying the practice, right? So the real estate was a little different than that. Generally, you got to come up with some down payment. There are significantly more hoops to jump through as it relates to environmental issues and inspections and appraisals and things like that sort of fall under that umbrella. And frankly, a lot of bankers sort of shied away from it because it is nuanced and complex, and they didn't know about it. I decided to jump into it with both feet, and really I found it a really interesting differentiator for some docs. Really, it's you got to think of sort of the life cycle of the business, right? As a practice owner, you're either going to buy a practice, you're going to buy into a practice, or we're going to start one from scratch. Generally, going to have a lease at the beginning of your career, most likely, and then once that lease expires, it's probably time to invest in real estate rather than continue to spend money on a lease and pay it to a landlord for the remainder of your career. So maybe you're 40, maybe you're 38 or 46, and you buy and you build a building. So the thought is always like, at the end of my career, maybe I'll hold on to this in perpetuity or whatever and lease it back. But a funny thing happens at the end of your career, like you don't have the energy to do that anymore, and you want to sell the practice and you want to sell the real estate. Like the number who hold on to the real estate, I could probably count on two hands over the course of
Wow.
13 years.
Yeah.
It's time, right? It's being a landlord isn't the most glamorous glitzy gig in the world, and sometimes you just want to take all the chips off the table when it's time to go golfing or go fishing or hang out with the grandkids. So that was my sort of career at B of A. I was I ultimately decided to leave there and take on a new challenge, was to start a dental real estate investment firm with a couple of folks a couple of guys that I've known for years and years. We built a modest portfolio of looking for buying dental buildings and on sale leaseback most often. But a lot of times it was folks who had already sold to DSOs or who were contemplating selling to DSOs, and the DSO didn't want to buy the building. And that couple of years got me really involved in the world of private equity and DSOs and how they tick and what's different about them than on the private practice side. So it felt like it gave me a nice sort of balanced approach at looking at both of those paths objectively, and that consequently led me to this, right? So I've been with Menlo for about 18 months now, and I feel like throughout the course of my career, probably not on purpose, if I'm being honest, just as a result of the experience and the path that life took me on, I've prepared myself, I think, really well to give sound counsel to folks as they navigate through their career, right? So when you're a practice owner, you have challenges that are different when you're 30 than they are when you're 60. And I want to be able to provide sound guidance and resources, and really just give sort of a tailored support message to folks as they go. And financial success is a piece of it, certainly, but really that last part, personal and professional fulfillment, that's different for everybody, right? So helping to sort of understand what it is to you, what matters the most to you as some people very, very happy with one location, 32-hour work week, making a good living, helping the community, go home, don't think about it all that much, and have great, fantastic work-life balance. They do that for 35 years and sell. And that is it's a fantastic path. It has been for decades. Some look at this scenario and say, I want to do more than that. I want to build a big one. I want to own multiple locations. All of those pose different challenges, and there are different things that are going to pop up along the way as it relates to banking, as it relates to real estate, as it relates to your exit or entrance and buying a practice, that feel like I'm at least reasonably well positioned to have some of that in there, and or to be able to give some guidance there. And so that sort of led me to where I am in my career today.
Yep.
So I mentioned I'd be brief related to what we do really on the practice side. I think a lot of folks know some and maybe not all of the nuance between selling to an individual dentist and selling to a DSO. On the DSO side, it's we've got smart people at the top of the tower that are building something that is repeatable and reliable, and they look kind of the same, right? A lot of things look kind of the same. Every offer you might get is different. You know, you've seen one offer from a DSO, you've seen one, but there's generally the process is streamlined. They're generally backed by private equity. They're generally going to be structure. You're going to be required to work back for a number of years, and there's going to be structure. You're not going to get all your cash up front. You're going to work back and earn it out, or you're going to be part of a joint venture model where you continue to get distributions as the business continues to grow and thrive under the partnership model, right? Their contract terms will be reasonably standardized. The expectation, if your broker does a good job of preparing you, is generally the same. There's nuance, certainly, but a lot of what I just said is sort of a normal look at that type of transaction. And a big part of that is always DSOs are not interested in buying your real estate. So the reason that is, most are backed by private equity. If a private equity firm says, "Hey, we're gonna pony up $100 million for you to go out here and buy dental practices," that group will spend every bit of that 100 million buying practices and zero of the 100 million buying buildings, because they have investors and they need return, and and when you spend $1 million on a dental building, on a dental practice, $1 million a year dental practice, if it's run well, as you'd expect after doctors are paid, for it to make about 20%. On the real estate side, it's about a fifth of that. Maybe it's 4%, maybe it's 5%. So not the best use of their money. And so they'd rather spend that money on 5 more practices to continue to grow the business that way, right, as they aggregate. So, as a result, there's a lot of reluctant landlords in the world today, right, that don't know of other paths to exit out of their building. And that's a little piece of kind of what we do, which I'll get to here in a minute. When you sell to an individual dentist, I think it's a little more prevalent. You probably know somebody who's done it already if you're nearing the end of your career, and you probably can kind of guess anyway, right? It's more of a traditional sale. As I mentioned before, the banking is fantastic. So generally, you're going to get 100%. They'll get 100% financing, the buyer will, and therefore you'll get 100% of your cash up front. It is dependent on the buyer securing a loan, but as I mentioned, like, that's generally not difficult. Even walking out of school with $350,000 worth of debt, if you get out of school and you put a few bucks away and you show your production capability, it's generally not very difficult to get approved to buy a good, thriving practice. The transition period is a little shorter. Usually there's a work back if the buyer wants it, just to sort of help through the transition of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months. And the terms are a little more negotiable because we're one individual and another individual having real dialogue and conversations about what matter to us. And that's okay. And then our attorneys will probably get involved and they'll duke out the finer details of that stuff. But really, that's it. And now you got a new buyer, a new owner of the business. Generally, the staff stays. Generally, the new buyer will be interested in buying real estate a lot of times. And so understanding what the real estate is worth and setting the right price for the real estate is a really important piece of that. And really the thing that stops the buyer from buying the real estate is the bank or their appetite for risk. Maybe they don't want to take on another $500,000 in debt or $1 million more in debt to buy the real estate. So knowing that on the way in and understanding what solutions you might have as a seller if the buyer doesn't want to buy your real estate is a big important piece to this too. It's amazing how many times in the banking world that I got into this, in the real estate investment world that I got into this. On the banking world, it was everybody knows to the dollar what the purchase price is for the practice, right? a lot of times the valuation is done, a third-party valuation expert, the seller will spend $3,500 and it's $785,650, like down to the penny. And then, okay, well, what's the asking price for the real estate? They're like, I don't know, like just whatever it appraises for, like that, right? That's actually the answer. So knowing, and look, oftentimes that's a big chunk of this,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
In
yeah.
some areas of the country, it's bigger than the practice.
Mhm.
So having a better understanding of what it can and should be worth helps you to plan and prepare for what it's going to look like. And then maybe it makes sense to sell the real estate to an investor as opposed to the end user in some of those scenarios too, because sometimes, like I said, you're upside down on one or the other, and it'll be more difficult for the buyer to finance both. Now you've opened up the buyer pool some as a seller to say, hey, we're only looking to sell the real estate now, or I'm sorry, we're only looking to sell the practice now, and we'll sell the real estate in the future to either you as my owner user, or if you don't want to buy it, then we'll sell it to an investor, or I'll hold it in perpetuity and collect checks from the cash flow, right? So options are fantastic. It's best when you understand what they are walking in so that you can plan accordingly for what your life is going to look like walking out, right? So that's practice stuff, right? I mentioned the real estate. I've brought that up a couple times. Like one of the reason that I ultimately decided to join up with Menlo 18 months ago was really this sort of the fact that we have this comprehensive look at practice and real estate and how they work together. I've seen it in the banking side and on the real estate side, where if you get the wrong lease or you get the wrong terms of your lease when you're looking to sell the practice, it can really hurt you, and you're leaving lots and lots of money on the table if you just, even if you get a great deal on the practice and you just sign a bad lease. As an investor, we didn't even want to buy it. I know there are some investors who will buy it, but you're definitely going to take a haircut on it just based on the fact that you didn't get the right counsel on the front end as it related to the terms of the real estate. So we'll get into that here.
Yep.
So it's interesting. Everybody, people look at dentists as they go in their career, really look at one thing, the practice. Like, I'm building this practice because it is your day to day. You think of it every day and you work there every day. But really, as a result of just time, you're building equity in two things: your practice and your real estate.
Yep.
So many times we focus on the guy on the left, and even though he looks exactly the same as the guy on the right, we only focus on him. He's building equity in both of those things, and we want to make sure that we don't forget one and only focus on the other. Right. So when we're talking to a DSO and the DSO says, hey, we're going to write you a check, doc, for $5 million for your practice. Isn't this fantastic? And she says, yes, of course, it's great. What do I do with the real estate? And you're going to be a landlord, great. Or we may know somebody who will buy it, and it's going to be X, right? We think it should be worth. What's it worth? What's it worth in the market today? Well, it might be worth $500,000, and that might be right in the comparable sales market. That's not any different than if you go to sell your house tomorrow. You may want $1 million for your house, but if every other house in your neighborhood and in your general vicinity that looks and feels the same as yours is selling for $750, guess what?
Yeah.
It's going to sit on the market for a really, really long time, but really you're going to get $750, right? So that is a reality in the dental world too. Dental buildings, dental appraisers will use comparable sales in the area to determine the value of your building. Certainly if you sell to an owner user, and oftentimes, like, depending on who the buyer might be. Now, there's a different way to do it too, right? And there is a massive pool of real estate investors all over the U.S. who are looking for assets. They have cash to spend, and they want to put it into, and real estate's a hot place to put money, always. Continues to appreciate. You have a hard asset. It's tried and true. Lots and lots of wealthy people around America have real estate assets, no question. The tax laws sort of help with some of the real estate stuff as well. So the difference between an investor buying your real estate and an owner user buying your real estate is really the investor will buy, in essence, is buying the lease, right? They're buying the stream of income from your lease. So you're going to pay $1 million over the course of 10 years or whatever it is. And that's a lot different than the dental office 2 miles down the road that looks and feels like mine sold for X. That is, I'm buying dollars that are going to be paid to the landlord over the course of 10 years. And then they assign a cap rate to it, which is really just profit, right? How much profit are they going to make on it? And generally that purchase price ends up being significantly more in a lot of those scenarios. So if you walk into it on the front end with an analysis of the real estate and you say, okay, well, now I can sort of monkey with this, right? If I pull this lever, then my bid, if I and raise my own rent, my practice gets less. I can fetch less for my practice when I go to sell it. Same is true the opposite way. If I want to scale back the rent a little bit, my profit of my practice is a little better, right? So that, and sometimes doing one versus the other makes sense, and sometimes it's the opposite, right? Doing that math and figuring out the gymnastics around that is a nuanced and difficult thing that requires you to have a lot of market knowledge that most folks don't have, right? So when you're represented by professionals who understand it on both sides and how they work together, I pull this lever, this one moves, and we pull it back the other way and it moves the other way. Now we can make really good educated decisions well before we're ready to sell anything, right? Yeah. And so, like, you guys talk about it all the time. You're in the planning business. Your transition is a big plan. It's the big plan at the end, right, of your career. So spend time really understanding how those two pieces work together. And when you do, it helps to maximize your exit at the end of your career that you've spent this entire career building that equity, really on one and then on the other, on the practice and the real estate. And I always say, look, just don't sleep on the real estate. That's it, right? So it's a big important piece to what we do, and it's such a forgotten piece of this, and almost a throw into the deal sometimes for folks. And I've seen it over and over again. And my goodness, it can be such a powerful piece to what you're doing. And it just takes a little bit more planning and really educating yourself as to what it looks like. That's all. So with that, I thank you again for your time and letting me drone on about Menlo and myself and a little bit about kind of who we are and what we're doing here. I'm excited to be a part of this group. I'm excited to be working with you and Reese and Ryan and all of the team of advisors at DA. You guys are awesome, and I sure appreciate this opportunity to speak with you and obviously any of the Dentist Advisor clients.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dave. And as Dave mentioned, a few things as you're listening to this. You've either seen this on our Facebook Live page. You can reach out to Dave on our dentistadvisors.com page, or you're accessing this inside our library. You can also reach out to me. And overall, the recommendation is just to schedule time to be familiar with your plans and have a strategy first and foremost. And so we like that Dave and team are willing to work with you in leading up to that point. We also like their expertise in the real estate side as well, because oftentimes it's going together, and it's nice to be able to have a one-stop shop that handles both for you. So more to come from Menlo and from Dave. And Dave, we're so glad that you joined us today. This has been awesome. Appreciate the educated presentation, and look forward to talking with you soon.
Thank you, man. Likewise, Spencer. Appreciate it.